Hello there. Hello there. Uh, my name is Al, and this is Al's tutorial series on C++, lesson number 136. Maybe I should start a new series, although the topic is always something to do with C++, or batch files. Now, I don't really have a topic so much as a report, I guess, an update. I've been doing a lot of stuff, but I haven't actually done anything, like made a new program or outlined a particular thing to do. Something came up, and that was it wasn't this project. It was the quick list. I was working with this quick list thing, and what I wanted to do was I wanted to be able to right click on one of these things and have another pop-up come up on top of this one, but it didn't like that. And I tried various tricks, to make the window handle of this to be the parent, which should be, but for some reason, no matter what you do, this one is going to die. That there I had to force. It won't die on its own just by clicking, but it certainly will if you start another either a dialogue or another menu or something. It's supposed to kill itself. So it can't be the parent of another menu. It can have sub-menus, but I don't think, although I think this thing has a right click. Yeah, see now, I don't know how they do this. I've right clicked. You see, you can do stuff, and but they must be using some kind of trick, like the owner drawn or something. Then it doesn't appear to be possible. Anyway, that's not a big deal. But here was my problem. I wanted to be able to rearrange the items in the list, because as I add them, if I add a new item, let's say I go so here at part A. First, I had code to bring up a dialog to browse for a file, and then I took another piece of code from somewhere else that did the same thing and put it in common, and it turned out that had a bunch of bugs to fix, so that cost time. But here it is working, and this is a common function. So let's suppose I don't know. The draw thing, because this also had partly to do with the problem. What I thought was the problem anyway. So what I wanted to do was bring up this. See? You'll notice the draw thing is on the bottom. And the new things always go up on the bottom. And I was thinking maybe they should go on the top. But either way, at some point you want to maybe remove or move them around or something. So instead of that, I just added this organizer. Now, you'll notice that the text doesn't fit if it's too long, so I have to have this scroll bar. Well, that's no problem. And these should be pretty obvious. This cuts one away, and this moves the selected thing down, and this moves it up. Okay. That involved locating another bug and fixing it. Something to do with the the list box class having a insert didn't work. It's fixed. Just a copy paste bug. But my problem with this was it's a very quick list. Yeah. And where's the organizing dialog? What I try to do is I'm trying to find out what should I set the width of the what they call the horizontal extent of the box, so that if the text goes over the side, you get a scroll bar. Well, it turns out that they have this great function that, given the device context and a string and the number of characters in the string, it will tell you the total, the width and the height of that string. So I can find out the maximum width and just set horizontal extent to that. But that was, well, first, this was always coming out to 0. And what I had here was DC and then just H1. I've forgotten about how I implemented the class, and I see that there's a constructor that takes an H-wind. So I was just passing him the H-wind and nothing was happening. So I checked and I saw that passing an H-wind into this object doesn't do anything, but it just sets a variable. It doesn't create, or it doesn't get a device context. So what I have to do is I have to pass in get DC from H-wind, right? And so I was looking at the help on get DC just because I was there. This is where it all started. I realized suddenly I've been getting all these device contexts all over the place, and I've never been releasing them. And I guess that initially I must have thought that this thing, when it just dies, would release the device context. But as you'll see in a minute, it can't do that in every case. Okay, now the question is, when do you have to call this function? Get window DC and get DC that retrieves a common DC, whatever that means. You cannot use release DC for something that was created with create DC, sure. In that case, you have to use delete. So release and get are reference counter things, right? And so when you create something, it doesn't have any references, so you have to delete it manually. But there's more to that story than that. Let me just see what get DC. Okay, now using common DC, release DC must be called. But there's a case where you don't. Release DC must reside in the same thread. No, I know I read this. I know I read it somewhere. Oh, just no, what was that? That it says that you don't have to call it for your own device context. The ones that you made. Oh, here. For class and private DC, get DC leaves the previously assigned attributes unchanged. So get DC does nothing, but for common DCs, something happens. Default attributes get set each time a retrieval occurs. For example, the default font is system, which is a bitmap. Because of this, the handle for a common DC returned by getDC does not tell you what font, color, or brush it is. Was used when the window was wrong. I don't know if that's what to do with that. In any case, so class and private DCs don't need to be released. It says that somewhere. Must be called. Yeah, class and private DCs don't have to be released. But it certainly wouldn't hurt to call release DC if you have a DC. In the case where it's a class or a private DC, nothing would happen, right? You don't have to call it, but you can call it. It just won't have any effect, I assume. And according to my tests, that seems true. But in the case of one of these common ones, you do have to release. Now I use these. Now sometimes I might get the device context of a dialog. Okay. Now I don't think that is private, even if it's my own dialog. But it might be, but I don't think so, because whenever I used to run programs, it's going crazy. Under the debugger, like this draw thing, or the animator or whatever. Typically, when I close the debugger, lots of the window wouldn't redraw itself, and it seems like I've been using up all the device context. There are only 5 common DCs available per thread. Failure to release can prevent other applications from accessing them. So the debugger perhaps was unable to access one of the common device contexts while my program was running underneath it, and then after the program finishes, everything gets cleaned up and it's okay again. So there was a symptom there, and I always wondered about that symptom, and now it seems to be gone. See, this is again goes back to the problem of no memory leak report, right? If they didn't have automatic cleanup, I would get a memory leak report in my program. Didn't some resources were not free, such and so, right? And I would have known about the problem ages ago. But because this is fancy and cool, you don't need to do any cleanup yourself, because that's handled automatically. Anyway, but actually there are tools that will detect such things. Next, going back to this device context thing, immediately I say, okay, well, if I pass in an H1, what I'll do is I'll do that get DC in the class there, and then when it's destroy, I'll release it, right? And so then I made that change quickly and went to go have supper. While I'm sitting there thinking, having my supper, I realized that no, I can't do that at all, right? That's a well. First of all, um, I declare that I was declaring those DCs with HWin during WM Paint, right? Well, you're not supposed to call get DC, so that would be the wrong thing to do in that case. And the other thing is that well, that's one thing. The other thing is that there was a constructor that took an HDC, so you can convert an HDC into one of these, but then how would you wouldn't be able to release it because release DC requires an H1, you see. So I had to go and revert that change. But still, I didn't like the idea of having to call get DC out here and then try to figure out that there's no returns, you know. This thing should clean up in the case when it does need to allocate a device context. So I came up with this idea. First, I call it a hack, but I guess it's no longer a hack. There's an empty constructor which doesn't do anything, and there's one that takes an H1, and the one that takes an H1 calls get DC. So you can't convert an HDC into one of these things directly. You could, if you wanted to use the functionality here and didn't require it to know anything about the window, then I instead of putting it as a constructor, I make it a separate function to emphasize that it's not this is not part of the construction of the object. This guy is safe, not going to get free accidentally. Okay, so now there's three cases. One is if you pass in it, if you're going to pass in an H1 and this thing is supposed to turn into a device context, that implies that this thing must call get DC, and so for that so therefore this thing must be responsible for the cleanup in that case. So now all the cases where there is a WM paint, I can no longer use this, right? I have to declare an empty one, and then begin paint taking an H1 instead of see what I was doing was I pass the H1 in first, and then I wouldn't have to specify it here. Well, too bad. That's the way it works. Now, you see, begin paint here takes an H1 and retrieves a device context during the paint processing, and then instead of release DC, there's a function called end paint. And end paint also uses the same H-wind and the device context the system handed over. So therefore, the way it works in the case of a W on paint, as you can see, if I can find one, W on paint, declare device context, begin paint, here painting, and that's it. There's no, you don't call end paint. This guy will clean up, it'll know by simple deduction, the simple deductive process that there's only one possibility in that case, and in all cases. See, if you attach an HDC to this thing, that sets this variable. But all of this is going to be null, and there won't be any H-wind. So if there's no H-wind and none of this, but just an HDC, then it knows that not to do anything at destruction. However, if you declare one using this constructor, then this would be valid and this would be valid, but this would be invalid. So therefore you know that that's the release DC case, not the W on paint case. And so in each case I know what to do on the store. Now that took about 30 iterations of changing my mind, trying one way and then another way and this way and that way, and recompiling and rebacking up. And then I noticed this problem with the draw thing. Oops. It was doing its usual drawing business, but every now and again there would be a white flash. It never used to do that before. And I thought it was because I'd made this huge change to the code. And I spent hours trying to figure out why it was making a white flash. And it had nothing to do with that. It would have done that before I made the change. That had to do with me adding a default white brush to all these windows, which I shouldn't have. Because even if you say you handled the paint for some reason or other, you return. You don't call def window prop. The system still tries to paint that full window with that brush. So, like, occasionally you'd see it. Occasionally you'd see the white flash. So now that's good, and everything's all fixed up. And this class is now starting to come together in a pretty nice way. I want to add more stuff to it, right? Like I said, it's in a half state. So in that case where I want to compute the text here, the text length, right? I pass the DC. Well, obviously I want that DC out here, right? Now, I don't know why it asks for the length, but perhaps because some strings are not necessarily null terminated. I mean, they're null terminated, and they're prematurely null terminated, like a string that is delimited by null. So you can have 10 strings, with a 0 separating each string, and then 2 zeros at the end. That's how these parameters are passed into these dialogues. It's a single string with null terminators or null delimiters, and 2 zeros at the end. Okay, so you gotta pass the line. And so I could write a function, add that function now to this and make that easier. What else do I do with BC? I'll add a new macro that does declare and compare. This is actually intentionally a thing that has a dangling if. I could write else here, and if I wanted to, it's meant to be used that way. Now it's not point. That might be a bug compiler. I have to double check to make sure that it's correct. Okay, it might be one if too many or something. Yeah, if and declare. So here's a perfect example where I want to say if the current selected item in the list is bigger than 0, right? And here's how I define curve cell. Then do this, right? And so instead of having to declare curve cell, set it equal to that, and then do if all that is confined to this one line. Let's see now. So that all got fixed up after a lot of struggle, and there's a point to all this. Well, what was my point? Well, the point has to do with making, I guess, like sweeping changes like that. It's something you sometimes have to do and suffer through it. And then now it's a matter of making sure that every single program works as it used to. And they do. In fact, it seems like everything's working smoother. Oh yeah, and so now that brings me to the other topic. After recompiling everything, I replaced my tool here. And I noticed, oh, I forgot. Oh, everything's got the styles now, and this is much nicer than before. See how you can get a nice big list. Before it was kind of ugly. So now all my dialogues have that funny style. Yeah, for instance, my text encryptor now has that weird style. Fancy Roman text. Can't find a. Sort of looks like an E. That could be a Greek psi, I think, for X. Let's see. E2. Anyway, this is just a little utility program that I wrote a long time ago for making your own leet, leet, L-E-E-T, which is a form of writing that super geeks are into. Now the way that you I found out how to do that by going to Microsoft's page, and they tell you how to do it, and there's nothing to it. See, let me give you an example. Now, is this gonna... Okay, well, here's an example. I have this here. If we open up Virtual Dove here, you know that this is my dialog, right? I haven't recompiled that. This is still not using the themes, right? Now, if we go here, we look at Virtual Dove. Now, the thing to look at is this thing called COMCTL32. Okay, Common Control 32. Now, you'll notice that there are two versions of that loaded into the address space of this program. If you go far enough, you see this one. This is a version 6. There's the version number. The name of the DLL is the same, Common Control 32 DLL. But here's another version, and that's a version 5. Now version 5 is not themed. That's the one that's loaded to draw this dialog, whereas his dialog, let's see, how can I get one of his dialogues to show up? That's like, that's not theme. Well, somehow the themes are going to apply to certain, like any kind of dialogue box or something. Not that one. You'll probably find, because these add-ons are written by other people, that one of them might be using the themes. Not that. In any case, all programs have it available, even if you're not using it. And you know that this program has it available because it's mapped into memory here. Okay. Now, what is the program thing? Because you see, that's common dialogue. There is something called Common Control 32 here. No, it's common dialogue. Okay, fair enough. Neither of them are where they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be in the System 32 directory, but because there are various, in the case where there are two versions, they have to be in two different places, I guess. And somehow or other it figures out which one to use. And here, for instance, there's another thing where we've got two runtime libraries in use. One version 8 from my thing, and the reason there's two 9s is because one is just a regular runtime, and the other one includes STL stuff like standard lists and maps and all that sort of jazz. Alright, so to get the themes going, all you gotta do is read slowly first. Don't do like I did and try to skip through it, because then you're gonna miss this line. All you gotta do is add this line to the top of your program, and then you get the themes. Okay? The other way is to go through this process of creating a manifest file and including it in your project. Luckily, somebody left a comment, and I used the comment actually. I found this before I found that they already explained how to do it in code. So that's it for that, and I've updated everything. Everything's working great. The thing's still working, I think. Should. A bit slow at the moment. No problems with that. You'll notice in my new fancy dialogue here that I've got these Unicode characters in here. Let's say I want to cut out. I want to cut. Hey. No, that's a bug. I can't select. Oh, so dumb. I thought I forgot what this is doing. Now what have I done? I put this. Just gotta go back up here. Okay. I suppose I want to get rid of this one. Cut. Nice one. Now, strangely enough, the dialogue editor let me put these funny characters in here, but it wouldn't put them in the resource file. And I tried, and I couldn't get them in the resource file. All I did was, start up. I just set the text equal to a single character, Unicode character, which I know exists for that font. This Courier new font. So that's all fine. Everything works great. Of course, this can only be Unicode, but you would only ever, if you have something that has to do with files, it has to be Unicode, right? You can't use an ANSI dialog box to list file names, because file names can be in Chinese, right? It's always got to be wide characters. Okay. So now, let me see how much time. So now that's not really much of a lesson, but now you know how to do the themes, and you know that it's painful to do sweeping changes to your code, though sometimes necessary. And so to leave things off on a happy note, I'll show you my new wallpaper that I made myself. Another smoking bonanza. This one, actually, I'm quite proud of this. I'm quite proud of this wallpaper. And I was quite lucky too. See, I think you get the idea, right? This is in fact, a picture of a young child. These pictures see, this is a Greek woman smoking, and it's quite big. But I wanted to use it somewhere because I like that one. And I've also always had this one that I hadn't used yet. This sort of how would you call it? Lower income, mobile but not upwardly, let's say, woman. Sort of looking kind of thoughtful or thinking, pensive or thinking about the past or something. And that I had just this one of a child smoking, and this one too. And then I noticed that this girl and this little girl and this grown-up girl look nearly the same. You can see it more clearly here. See that the shape of her nose is very similar, and even the way her eyes and the bridge of the nose. This could be a young version of this girl. So what I wanted to do was reproduce that sort of alleyway wherein the young girl would have been hiding, secretly smoking, doing a bad thing. She's a bad girl there. And here she is all grown up. It's the same place, never moved anywhere. Maybe she feels bad about herself or something. I don't know, but it's reflecting on the past, and how things haven't changed. And it's just a nice juxtaposition of the same person at different phases in their life, in the same place, doing the same thing, for different reasons. Here she would have been hiding the fact that she smokes. No, she doesn't care less. Now she's just hiding in general. Now this Greek one, if you look back at the picture, I wanted them all looking the same way, but she's looking the wrong way in the picture. So I took a mirror image of this one. So unfortunately, that's a mirror image of her. Well, not unfortunately. And she's got a similar look on her face. Like just thinking of the past, right? And she's staring out a window, and maybe there's a commonality between these two. I don't know. There's a consistency or something I like about it. I'm quite happy with the result. You might not notice it, but see, these bands are, I think they're repetitions. Are they exact repetitions? These ones are repeated. I guess this one's maybe a little bit further on, but one's in front and the others are behind. No, two are in front and the other one's behind. Is that right? This one's in front of the girl. Yeah. The other one's behind the girl and then in front again. So it has a neat effect. Anyway, so that's it. Now you've seen my wonderful wallpaper, and learned almost nothing, but all that stuff's been uploaded, so if you're interested in downloading and really running that stuff through the test, I can't test everything. I've tested all of these programs, right? That's about half of the ones that I have, and they all seem to be working okay. But it would be useful if somebody else would try. According to that website, that manifest thing shouldn't have any effect on earlier operating systems. Okay, so for next time, I still don't know exactly what I'm going to do. I'd like to be able to figure out that trick. Another thing I can do is I can add icons in this. You can make this owner drawn, and you can have icons in this menu. Or you can make it a, one of these kinds of menus. But that's too much. That's overload. Okay, well, that's all. Just a minor update to let you know what I'm doing.